We're going from inside to outside, where we're gonna officially put the OnReal 4K to its first video test. Last year, got one of these bad boys for $100. This year, it looks like they upgraded the camera a little bit, coming in at 150 bucks. We're gonna have more video settings, we're gonna have higher resolutions, better stabilization, and better audio. So what we're here today to do is put all that to the test. So let's see how this bad boy performs. So a lot of us that might be in the market for an action camera similar to the OnReal 4K, the one thing that you're going to find yourself is this camera needs to be something that you can kind of put wherever, take wherever, fit in small places, and on top of that, it needs to be able to capture good audio. Now last year's OnReal 4K camera coming in at $100, that was probably my biggest concern, was the audio. Currently I'm recording with the new model. We're recording out of its actual casing, so it's just attached to the monopod, and just wanting to get an honest read on the audio situation. Got a little bit of wind going on, but interested to see how it's picking up. And then as we kind of use the camera even more and more, a little walk and talk is what a lot of us are going to be doing on our travel videos, or if we're buying action cams. So one, we want to find out if the audio works, and two, we want to find out about the stabilization. Now currently I'm shooting at 4K 30 with image stabilization on. I'm not going to say it's going to compare to the new Hero 7, but once again, I could buy 3 of these cameras for the price of one of the Hero 7s. So one thing that we're going to notice with the OnReal 4K 2018-2019 model is going to be the amount of video settings that you're going to have. You're going to have video mode, time-lapse video mode, and then slow motion. And those are going to pretty much be the only 3 that we're going to venture into. So let's go ahead and start with video mode. Okay, so now that we're in video mode, we're then going to go to our settings, and we're going to go to some of the resolutions. And we're just going to kind of go through some of the resolutions that are offered. Several 4K options at 30 frames per second. I'm going to most likely stick with our top one with the 3840 by 2160 4K at 30 frames per second, which is going to be nice in regards to filming any kind of action video or just walk and talk scenes. We're going to scroll down and we have 2.7K. We go to the 14 at 60 frames per second, more 30 frames per second, 60 frames, all that kind of good stuff. Now, like I said, I'm going to stick to 4K in most situations at 30 frames per second, and then if I'm really going to kind of probably get the best bang for the buck out of this, I'm probably going to scroll down to the 1080 and maybe do some 60 or 30 frames. Okay, so that is officially a wrap with the OnReal late 2018, early 2019 model, coming in at $150. Similar to last year's. Am I impressed? I am for the price. As far as quality goes, still not on par with the GoPros, but the price, 150 bucks. So what I found myself when using this camera, I found myself leaning hard on the 4K 30, which you saw in the earlier montage, the 1080 at 60 frames per second, and then also the 1080 at 120 frames per second. Kind of juggling back and forth between those 3 modes, what I found is those tend to perform the best and gave me a high enough resolution that I could actually use the footage in post-production, which I used in that earlier montage.
But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. You know, $1,000 for your cell phone and $150 for this. When compared side by side, I get it. Your phone's going to outperform the OnReal 4K, but we're talking $150 and like the iPhone 8, let's just say $800 to $1,000, anything above this. So a pretty decent option for someone that's looking to get into action cameras. And the reason I say that this isn't a good option, and just hear me out, it's because a lot of us immediately think we need to either go with a GoPro and get the best action camera possible, or we need to use our iPhone. And I think our iPhones or our cell phones are a good option, but if you're gonna go the GoPro action camera route, it's probably good to start with something cheap. And the reason I say that is there becomes a lot of work outside of just hitting the record button in regards to editing, in regards to kind of knowing what you're gonna say on camera. There's just a whole assortment of things. So what I find is a lot of people go out and spend a lot of money on a GoPro, and it ends up just sitting on a shelf and collecting dust, when inevitably you're probably gonna get the same result. Either you're going to have a blast with these, you're gonna master this one and move on to something bigger and better, or you're gonna find out it's a lot of work, you don't really wanna do travel videos, or you don't wanna do a lot of filming, and you're just gonna put this camera or the GoPro on the shelf regardless. So this might be a good option for someone wanting to learn what it's like to get out there and film action stuff, and just honestly understand cameras more. Now, a couple of things that I did want to compare this year's model and at its price point compared to last year's is going to be the in-body stabilization. I did a scene where I was doing some walking and talking, and the in-body stabilization is pretty good. Actually, definitely usable. It didn't have much warping going on, so overall, I'll give a thumbs up to the stabilization as far as in the 4K 30 frames per second mode. The other modes, the stabilization seemed fine as well. I think there was a slight crop factor, but in my experience, I didn't really notice making much of a difference. And as we move on to battery life of the OnReal 4K, one thing that I did a test is I ran this recording 2-camera 4K 30 frames, and it ran for over 35 minutes. And I say over 35 because the actual card itself filled up, which is a 32 gig card, before it actually ran out of battery, and that was at 35 minutes. Then it kind of went into its sleep mode. So I'm gonna say ballpark, a battery is gonna be anywhere from like 30 to 40 minutes, maybe even longer depending on your situation. I was inside, so let's take that in consideration. If you're outside and it was cold, battery life's gonna be a little less. But in this case, they give you 2 batteries, and that's a nice little touch for this year's OnReal 4K. And then moving to my biggest con of this year's and even last year's camera was going to be the audio situation, because in a lot of situations, we're gonna do some walking and talking with our action camera, talking directly to it. Now, when I did my walk and talk, I actually took it out of its case. Reason being is I really wanted to see what kind of audio I was gonna be able to get out of the OnReal, the newer model this year, because I was not happy with last year's. And was I happy? No. Was I disappointed? No, not either, because here's what I have to say. They definitely made the audio better this year on this model, and it's something that can be usable, especially in a situation like this where you're just gonna be holding it out and you're gonna be talking to it, and it's nice and close. Now, if you were actually trying to do anything outside of that, it might not even be usable. So for, you know, $150, the audio was okay and could be used, but in most situations, I would probably want to have another audio source. So overall, 150 bucks compared to last year's model, definitely far more superior, a ton of video settings. I'll put a link in the description below. I'll also throw up last year's video if you just want to compare this one to last year's. And then finally, I look forward to doing a side-by-side comparison of this OnReal 4K versus the GoPro Hero 5, so you guys can get a real understanding of like $300 versus $150. And as always, guys, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you like the content I keep creating on this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.